He looked me dead in the eye and said, "This isn't a job for women." I was the only one working weekends, pulling all-nighters, and hitting every deadline. And I got told that. Stay with me for a few minutes while I tell you what happened. You won't forget it. I had been at the firm for 5 years. My name's Avery Morgan, and I was one of the youngest project managers in a high-end architecture company in Austin. I loved what I did. Buildings, design, details, they were everything to me. I put my heart into every project. When others went home, I stayed late. I worked weekends. I covered for people who slacked off. And I never once complained. I just thought, if I work hard enough, they'll see me. For the past 3 years, I had been aiming for one thing: promotion. Not just for the title, but because I knew I'd earned it. My boss, Frank Dillard, had hinted at it more than once. But when the time finally came, he didn't give me the role. He gave it to Kyle. Kyle, the new guy who'd only been there 6 months. The one who took long lunches and showed up late. The one who once asked me how to spell blueprint. I sat in Frank's office, trying to stay calm, expecting some kind of explanation. And he gave me one, the worst one. He said, "You're talented, Avery, but let's face it, this isn't a job for women." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My ears rang. I wasn't sure I'd heard him right, but I had. He meant it. All those nights I stayed late, all those weekends I missed family dinners, none of it mattered. Not to him, because I was a woman. That was all he saw. I walked out of his office and sat in my car for an hour. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the wheel and thought, what's the point of working so hard if this is how it ends? People in the office whispered when they found out. Kyle didn't even look guilty. He just smiled like he won a prize. Some of my coworkers avoided me. And the ones I thought were my friends, they said nothing. They acted like it was normal, like it was fine. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about every moment I sacrificed for that job. Every time I went the extra mile. And now I was being told I didn't belong, just because I was a woman? It was more than just unfair. It was a slap in the face. But I didn't know yet that this slap would be the thing that finally pushed me to build something better. Something of my own. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself to keep things professional, to prove them wrong by just doing my job better than anyone else. But every day at that office started feeling like a fight I was losing. Kyle was everywhere now. Every meeting, every client call. And every time, he found a way to slip in my ideas as his own. I'd watch him repeat phrases from my proposal word for word. I'd watch him present my designs without even changing the titles. And the worst part, Frank acted like Kyle was some rising star. He'd nod, smile, and say things like, "That's the kind of initiative we need," while I sat 2 chairs away, biting my tongue. I kept wondering how Kyle was even getting access to my drafts. I was careful. I didn't share with anyone. At least, that's what I thought. Then one evening, I stayed late to finish a project. I stepped out for coffee and came back to find my email open on Jenna's screen. Jenna, my friend, my teammate, the one person I trusted. She was copying my latest presentation into a USB drive. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to lie. She said Kyle promised her a spot on his team, a real promotion, if she helped him stay ahead. I couldn't believe it. After everything we'd been through, after all the times I stood up for her, she sold me out. The next day, during a huge client meeting, I was supposed to present our final concept. I had spent weeks perfecting it, but right as I began, Kyle interrupted. He cut in, said he had a more streamlined version, and started clicking through my slides, but with his name at the bottom. I looked around the room, waiting for someone to speak up. Frank just smirked. I snapped. I called Kyle out right there. I told the clients the truth, that the work was mine, that it had been stolen. My voice was shaking, but I didn't stop. I said Jenna betrayed me. I said Frank allowed it. When the meeting ended, I was pulled into HR. They didn't ask what happened. They told me I was too emotional and warned me about unprofessional conduct. That night, I packed up my desk. No goodbyes, no tears. Just a quiet walk out of the place I once gave everything to. I didn't know what was next, only that I was done letting people walk over me. The first few weeks after quitting felt like freefall. I didn't set alarms. I didn't answer calls. I barely ate. Most days, I just sat on my couch, staring at the wall, playing every moment of that last meeting over and over in my head. I kept hearing Frank's smug voice. I kept seeing Kyle's fake smile. And Jenna's betrayal? That stung worst of all. I felt like everything I had worked for meant nothing. 3 years of overtime, skipped holidays, missed birthdays, for what? To be dismissed, humiliated, and labeled too emotional? Then one afternoon, my older sister Lauren showed up uninvited, holding coffee in one hand and a folder in the other. She wasn't the hug and cry type. She was direct, sharp, and never sugar-coated anything. "You gonna sit here forever?" she asked. "Or are you gonna remind them who the hell you are?" I didn't answer. So she opened the folder. Inside were all the sketches I had done over the years. dream buildings, creative layouts, design concepts I had tucked away. She had kept them. Every single one. You didn't do all this for Kyle. Or Frank. You did this because you love it. Something clicked that day. Later that night, I sat at my tiny kitchen table and started sketching. Nothing fancy, just lines and shapes, ideas and names. I didn't know what I was building yet, but for the first time in weeks, my hands felt steady. Over the next few days, I started planning. I didn't have a team or a client or even an official business license yet, but I had notebooks full of ideas, hours of time, and a fire in my chest that refused to burn out. I cleared out my basement, bought a cheap drafting table off Craigslist, and opened a new file on my laptop. At the top, I typed the words, Morgan Studio. It felt bold. It felt terrifying, but it felt right. There were no investors. No startup money. Just the savings I had managed to scrape together, and every bit of knowledge I had earned from years of being underestimated. I taught myself how to build a website. I designed my own logo. I sent emails to every contact I had ever made, no matter how small. Some people ignored me. Some replied with fake politeness. But a few said, let's meet. And that was all I needed, a crack of light, the tiniest start. I wasn't trying to take down Frank or prove anything to Kyle anymore. I was building something of my own, something that couldn't be taken away. It wasn't much yet, just a cold basement, a folding chair, and a dream. But it was mine. Avery's first real break came from an unexpected place. A single mom named Carla, who had just inherited a rundown diner from her late father. She didn't have a big budget, just a dream and a little bit of hope. I want it to feel warm, Carla told her, like a place people come to when they've had a rough day. That line stuck with Avery. With barely enough money to cover materials, Avery threw herself into the project. She sketched late into the night, built small models by hand on her basement table, and even spent weekends sanding old furniture to give the place character. There were no assistants, no interns, just her, some secondhand tools, and a determination to prove she could do this. Halfway through the project, she hit a wall. Literally. The supplier scheduled to deliver reclaimed wood for the interior suddenly pulled out, citing policy changes. But Avery found out the truth from a kind worker who slipped her a warning. Frank's firm had blacklisted her. The supplier didn't want to lose their bigger client, so they quietly shut her out. At first, Avery panicked. The schedule was tight, and Carla was counting on her. But then, instead of breaking down, Avery got creative. She found a local craftsman who dealt in salvaged materials and explained her situation. He agreed to help, not for exposure, but because I've been bullied by big firms too. It set her back 3 days, and she barely slept, but she made it work. She redesigned the wall layout, refinished the booths herself, and pulled an all-nighter to finish the final touches. The morning of the opening, she walked through the doors with tired eyes and paint-stained hands, and saw the diner fully alive. Warm lights, soft earth tones, comfortable booths, and a welcoming feel that made it feel like home. When Carla saw it, she stood silently for a few seconds, then hugged Avery so tightly she almost couldn't breathe. "I've never had someone fight this hard for me," she whispered, crying. That moment made everything worth it. Photos of the renovation started to spread. Local blogs picked it up. A few small business owners reached out, saying, "If you did this with nothing, we want to see what you can do with a little more." Avery didn't just finish a project, she earned her first real win. And more importantly, her name was starting to mean something. Morgan Studio was finally picking up momentum. The diner project had sparked something, a buzz in the small business community. A yoga studio downtown called her, then a vintage bookstore. People liked her hands-on style and honest pricing. She wasn't trying to be flashy. She just listened, designed with care, and delivered. Avery felt like she was finally turning the page. But just as things began to look up, strange obstacles started popping up. First, a permit for her next project was delayed without any explanation. Then, a supplier she had just started working with suddenly stopped returning her calls. Another told her bluntly, "Sorry, we can't afford to upset Dillard and Company." That name made her stomach twist. It was too specific to be random. Frank Dillard, her old boss, was behind it. At first, she didn't want to believe it. It seemed petty, even for him. But as more delays and cold shoulders piled up, she couldn't ignore the pattern. It was like invisible hands were closing doors before she even reached them. She finally decided to confront the suspicion head-on. Avery drove to the city permitting office where she had once been a familiar face, back when she worked under Frank's firm. She found Mark, a longtime city planner she used to joke with over bad coffee and long wait time. He smiled when he saw her, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. After a little small talk, Avery leaned in. "Mark, is someone trying to block me?" He sighed, glanced around the empty hallway, and lowered his voice. "I shouldn't be saying this," he said carefully, "but your name came up in a very specific meeting. One where Dillard's people were asking a lot of pointed questions. About your permits. your licensing, even your past employment records. Avery felt like the wind had been knocked out of her. Why? She whispered. Mark shrugged, but his voice was kind. Because they're scared. You're getting noticed. That sentence changed everything. Frank didn't just dismiss her because she was a woman. Now he was actively trying to destroy her because she was succeeding. On the drive home, Avery clenched the wheel tighter than usual. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. If Frank wanted a silent war, fine. But she wasn't going anywhere. She went home, reopened her laptop, and made a list of backup suppliers, city contacts, alternate routes. She wasn't going to beg anyone. She would outwork, outthink, and outlast. Because now she knew the truth. Frank Dillard wasn't just her past anymore. He was her competition. Morgan Studio was growing faster than Avery expected. With new clients coming in every month, she knew she couldn't do it all alone. So she brought in a small team, 3 designers and 1 intern. They were fresh, full of ideas, and eager to prove themselves. One of them, Cameron, stood out right away. He was sharp, creative, and had the kind of energy Avery used to have when she first started. She took him under her wing, spending extra time helping him shape his ideas, pushing him toward leadership. Morgan Studio was slowly becoming a real team, not just a dream she built in her basement. But then something started to feel off. They'd lose projects they were confident about, ones where they were clearly the better choice. Clients would suddenly ghost her after requesting full proposals. And oddly enough, those exact design ideas would show up in projects handled by Dillard and Company. At first, Avery thought it was coincidence. Then she noticed something strange. Noah, the intern. He was polite, quiet, always on time. But too quiet. He never asked questions, never contributed much in meetings. And she remembered something. He had been placed through a city program, one she hadn't fully checked. She started looking into him. And there it was. Noah was Kyle's cousin. The same Kyle who took credit for her work. The same Kyle who got promoted over her. The same Kyle who had laughed when Frank said, "This isn't a job for women." Avery felt sick. It wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal from the inside. But she didn't panic. She got smart. She created a fake proposal. A beautiful one. Flashy enough to attract attention, but flawed enough to cause problems if stolen. She put it in the shared folder where Noah always accidentally clicked. A week later, Dillard and Company submitted that exact design to the same client, right down to the sketchy numbers Avery had planted. So she did the unthinkable. She wrote a polite, clear email to the client, with Kyle and Frank CC'd. She included timestamps, folder access logs, and a line-by-line breakdown of the copied design. Nothing dramatic, just facts. The client responded within an hour. "Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Morgan. We'll be working with you going forward." That was it. Avery didn't just win the project back. She sent a message. "You might come for me, but I'm always 10 steps ahead." Avery walked into the upscale restaurant with her head held high. She already knew why she'd been invited. Frank Dillard didn't do friendly lunches. He made deals, power plays disguised with steak and wine. She wore her best blazer, kept her expression calm, but her heart was pounding. Frank was already seated when she arrived, flashing that same smug smile she remembered from years ago. "Avery," he said, standing up just enough to seem polite. "You look successful." She didn't respond, just sat down and waited. He dove straight into it. "Look, I'll give you credit. You built something real. I didn't think you had it in you. But now's the time to be smart." A waiter came, poured water, took their orders. Avery didn't even glance at the menu. Frank leaned forward. "I'm offering to buy Morgan Studio. Full buyout. Cash. You walk away with more than you'd make in 10 years. No more late nights, no more city permit nonsense. You proved your point. Now cash in before it all gets harder." Avery stared at him. This man, the one who told her she didn't belong, who humiliated her, blocked her, tried to destroy her from the shadows, was now trying to buy her out. To erase her name, her work, her team. She picked up her napkin, folded it slowly, and placed it on the table. Then she looked him dead in the eye. "You don't get to erase me just because I made you uncomfortable," she said, her voice low but clear. "You said this wasn't a job for women. And now here I am, sitting across from a man who's terrified I might take everything he built." Frank's face tensed. "It's just business, Avery." "No," she said, standing. "It's cowardice." She turned and walked out. Heads turned as she passed. She didn't care. She didn't look back. By the time dessert was served, for just one, the story had already started to spread. Avery didn't post anything, but word traveled fast in their industry. By the end of the week, 3 of Frank's longtime clients had reached out to Morgan Studio for consultations. Within a month, one of his major accounts pulled out completely. Frank had built his empire on arrogance, control, and old-school power. Avery? She built hers on resilience, on talent, on proving herself, again and again, until no one could deny her place. He tried to buy her silence, but she chose to speak louder than ever. And the city listened. Morgan's studio was no longer just a dream born in a basement. It had grown, steadily, fiercely, and now it was about to take a massive leap. When Avery landed the $1 million contract with a rising green tech startup, she stared at the signed papers for a long time, not in disbelief, but in quiet, proud recognition of how far she'd come. With the new project, it was finally time to move her team out of her cramped apartment and into a real office. The space was nothing fancy, an old warehouse-turned-studio downtown, but it had character. High ceilings, brick walls, natural light. It felt like a beginning and a reward all at once. She gathered her team on the first day in the new space, and they toasted with cheap sparkling water and boxed pastries. There was laughter, excitement, and for the first time in a long time, Avery felt something close to peace. But then came an unexpected email from Jenna. The same Jenna who once slipped her presentation drafts to Kyle behind her back. The same Jenna who sat quietly while Frank humiliated her in meetings. She wrote, "I was wrong. I see that now. Frank fired me last month. I've lost a lot. But I haven't lost respect for what you've built. If you ever have room for someone willing to earn their second chance, I'd be grateful." Avery stared at the message for a long time. Old anger simmered. But something else stirred too, clarity. She called Jenna in for a meeting. Jenna showed up nervous, dressed plainly, no makeup, no ego. Avery didn't smile. She simply said, "If you're here for favors, don't bother." Jenna shook her head. "I'm here because I want to be part of something on it. I've seen what that looks like now, and I'm done pretending I didn't." Avery nodded once. "Then understand this. We build with integrity here. No backdoors. No lies. If you cross that line again, you're gone for good." Jenna agreed. Avery hired her. A few days later, Avery received a message from a former client of Frank's. It was short and private. "Thank you for standing up. Watching you walk out of that restaurant, it made me believe I could too. I'm leaving his firm. I want to do better. You've inspired more than you know." Avery sat with that message a long while, not for validation, but because it reminded her the fight was never just hers. It never was. The day the city opened bids for the new sustainable housing project, Avery knew it was more than just a job. It was a chance to challenge everything that had kept her down. For 3 years, Frank's firm had won that contract. Everyone assumed it was already his. But this time, Avery was stepping in, not just to compete, but to win. Her team worked nonstop for weeks. Late nights turned into early mornings. Pizza boxes stacked next to blueprint drafts. Coffee flowed like water. Avery wasn't just leading, she was deep in it, sketching alongside her designers, running numbers, editing presentations line by line. This bid had to be different, daring, real. It had to speak louder than Frank's money and connections ever could. She and Cameron, her protege, pitched a radical design, affordable modular housing with zero-waste systems and solar-integrated rooftop. It wasn't flashy. It was smart, scalable, and human. The review board was stunned. Some were hesitant. Others were quietly impressed. Frank, on the other hand, was furious. He tried everything, behind-the-scenes pressure, making calls to remind the board of his firm's long-standing relationship with the city. He threw money at the presentation, polished his numbers, and even dragged Kyle out to do PR interviews. But the board wasn't blind. Avery's proposal spoke to the future. And her name carried weight now, the kind built on grit, not favors. When the announcement came, Avery sat in her small office, surrounded by her team. Everyone leaned in as the city rep spoke on the live stream. And the winning bid for the 2025 Sustainable Living Project goes to Morgan Studio. Silence. Then the room erupted. Laughter. Cheers. Hugs. Avery didn't cry. She just smiled quietly, one hand over her mouth, the other in a fist of triumph. She had done it. They all had. Word spread fast. Frank's firm, expected to win, was publicly humiliated. Board members questioned his leadership. Kyle, already rattled by his earlier exposure, quit the same day, slipping away without a word. And over the next week, several employees from Frank's team sent quiet emails to Avery, asking for interviews, saying they were done being overlooked, done working in the shadows. But the real blow came when Frank's board called a special meeting and voted to remove him as CEO. The man who once told Avery, "This isn't a job for women," now watched from the sidelines as the woman he tried to crush built something stronger than he ever imagined. Avery didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She had built her place in the world, and no one could take it from her. The sun was high as Avery stepped up to the podium at the groundbreaking site. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. Behind her stood her team, architects, designers, interns, all wearing hard hats with the Morgan Studio logo. Just beyond them, steel beams were stacked, machines idled, and crews waited to begin the first phase of the city's new sustainable housing project. Her project. Avery looked calm, strong. She wore a blazer with rolled-up sleeves and dusty boots. It had taken her years, betrayals, and heartbreak to get here. But now she stood not just as a survivor, but as a leader. A reporter raised a hand. Avery, how does it feel stepping into a role that's been dominated by men for decades? She smiled slightly. Not bitter. Just knowing. It feels overdue, she said. This is exactly a job for women. And for anyone who's ever been told they're not enough. You don't have to wait for permission. You just need the guts to walk out the door and build something better. That answer would be quoted in articles, shared online, even printed on a poster in her new office. But in the moment, it was just honest. She hadn't planned it. She just spoke from the fire that got her here. Lauren, her sister, stood to the side with tears in her eyes. Cameron grinned, holding a binder of next steps. Even Jenna, now a loyal project lead, clapped quietly, proud. Avery stepped down and walked toward the first beam to be raised. She picked up a ceremonial wrench and gave the signal. The crane lifted the structure into place. The site buzzed with motion. Her vision was finally taking shape, in steel, concrete, and something more powerful, belief. She took a moment alone, stepping back from the crowd. Dust floated in the sunlight. She watched workers move, laughing, shouting, getting to it. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about legacy, about never letting someone else decide your worth. Frank was gone. His firm weakened. The people who once doubted her were now following her. But Avery didn't dwell on that. This was her firm, her rules, her win, and she had earned every piece of it. What do you think about Avery's journey? Was walking away and building her own future the right move, or should she have tried to change the system from the inside? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear them. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next.